One of these three will ensure a good development of beneficial bacteria in the filter then. And the final stage I would recommend is, if you can, if your filter can take it, is to use a small piece of filter floss right at the very end. So the way that I actually had my my hob set up that I showed you yesterday was a little bit like that. So the water comes into contact with the sponge first as it's pulled into the bottom of the filter, and then it rises up through the biomedia and then finally washes over the alpha grog as it flows back into the tank. That's only because it's a little bit impractical for me to use any filter floss in that filter itself. And the alpha grog, because it's such a good media but is quite chunky, doesn't sit very well in the bottom of the tray that I'm using in my Seachem filter. So I just swapped them around a little bit, and if my tank had become particularly cloudy, then I would certainly look to jam in a piece of filter floss in the top there. But even though they've gone to bed for the time being, just show you the clarity of the water. It's pretty good. It's pretty glassy, and as I showed you yesterday, that is it's just by using that layer on top as opposed to any kind of filter floss. And just to quickly run through what you can do with this filter as well, this knob here adjusts the flow rate so that there, oh, I think it was actually turned a little bit down with me, so you can reduce it down to nearly nothing, very slow trickle, and turn it up to full flow there. This little blue unit here is meant to pop up and rises out of the lid when it's time for the filter to be cleaned, and the way that that works is that this piece hangs down in this chamber on the side here on the filter, and should your media inside the basket become so clogged and full of waste that the water actually needs to bypass the media in order to flow out, it'll bypass it by entering this chamber here. And as this chamber fills up, because the water is bypassing the media, it'll cause this little spigot to float up in the water. So if that is actually floating up and sticking out of the lid, then your media is clogged and the filter obviously needs attention. But I suspect that using this type of biomedia, I'll never actually encounter a full clog in the filter, which is also beneficial and something to add some peace of mind. So I've just noticed as well, excuse these marks on my tanks, it's because I've got very hard water where I live, which means that there is a lot of carbonate and salt content in the water. So over time, as it dries, it just leaves that white calcium-like residue, which is also full of salts, and that is just something that I can scrape off the glass. I just haven't got round to it yet, so it's not a sign of my tank being dirty, which it may look like. As you can see, all the fish are quite happy in there. So that's the way that I've got my hob set up, as I said, using a combination of 3 of these medias here. So when it comes to setting up your own hob, I would certainly have a piece of sponge in the bottom of the tray, for example. I would then certainly use a type of ceramic media. The more porous, the better. You could use these instead of the ceramic media. I just feel generally that the ceramic media holds a greater total surface area because of the porous qualities. This is probably what I would call a cheaper ceramic media, so maybe worth spending a few more dollars if you can get something that's a bit more porous. And finally, if you can get any filter floss on the top, I could do that with my own filter. As it happens, I don't necessarily need it looking at the water quality, so I would then be tempted in that case to just fill it right up to the top with some of this biomedia, ensuring that none of it can spill out into the tank at any point, obviously.